I never thought the person who would destroy me would be the one I saved from the streets. My name is Geneva Hayes. I'm 67 years old, and for 42 years, I believed I had built something beautiful. A family born not from blood, but from choice. Marcus came into my life when he was barely 3. A frightened little boy with bruises on his arms and hunger in his eyes, abandoned at a church shelter where I volunteered every Saturday. The moment I held him, something inside me shifted. I had lost 2 pregnancies before that day. The doctors said my body would never carry a child to term. But when Marcus wrapped his tiny fingers around mine, I knew God had answered my prayers in a different way. I adopted him 6 months later. My husband Raymond and I poured everything we had into that boy. We lived in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in Southside Chicago back then, but we made it work. Raymond worked double shifts at the Postal Service while I cleaned houses during the day and took night classes to finish my nursing degree. Every penny we saved went toward Marcus's future. Piano lessons he begged for at age 7, baseball camp every summer, the best public schools we could access. I remember sitting at our kitchen table at 2 in the morning, studying for my licensing exam while Raymond dozed in his chair, still wearing his uniform. We were exhausted, always exhausted, but we were building something, or so I thought. Raymond passed 11 years ago. Massive heart attack at 61, gone before the ambulance arrived. Marcus held me at the funeral, whispered that he would take care of me now, that I would never be alone. His wife Diane stood beside him, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. Their daughter Crystal, my precious grandbaby, only 13 then, clung to my arm and promised she would always love her grandma Geneva. That day, despite the crushing grief, I felt surrounded by love. I felt like my sacrifices had meant something. How spectacularly wrong I was. The unraveling began on a Tuesday afternoon, though I didn't recognize it yet. I had a routine appointment with Dr. Michael Chen, my physician for the past 8 years. Nothing unusual, just my quarterly checkup to monitor my blood pressure and cholesterol. I've always been healthy, thank God, strong genes despite everything life has thrown at me. But that day, Dr. Chen seemed distracted. His hands trembled slightly when he took my blood pressure. He avoided looking directly at me, kept glancing toward the door as if expecting someone to burst in. "Everything looks excellent, Mrs. Hayes," he said, but his voice carried an odd strain. "Your numbers are better than people half your age. You're going to be around for a long time." I smiled, gathering my purse to leave, pleased with the good news. That's when it happened. As I stood, Dr. Chen moved closer, pretending to adjust his stethoscope. In one swift motion, he slipped something into the outer pocket of my purse, a folded piece of paper, pressed in so quickly I almost missed it. Our eyes met for just a second. His expression was urgent, pleading. "Mrs. Hayes," he said carefully, "remember that family dynamics can be complicated. Not everything is as it appears." My heart began to pound. "Dr. Chen, what? Have a good day, Mrs. Hayes. Take care of yourself." He turned away abruptly, ending the appointment. I walked out of that office with my pulse racing and my hands shaking. Dr. Chen had never acted strangely before. He was professional, kind, always thorough. Why would he slip me a secret note? What did he mean about family dynamics? The rational part of my mind tried to calm me. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he'd made a mistake. But something deeper, some instinct I'd learned to trust over 67 years of living, told me everything was about to change. I took a taxi home instead of the bus, too anxious to wait. During that 20-minute ride through familiar streets, I kept touching my purse, feeling the outline of that folded paper, but I couldn't bring myself to read it. Not yet. I needed to be somewhere safe, somewhere private. The driver kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror. "You all right, ma'am?" he asked. "Yes, thank you. Just tired." But I wasn't tired. I was terrified, though I couldn't have explained why. When I arrived home, Marcus's Mercedes was parked in the driveway. That surprised me. He usually worked until 6, managing the regional office of an insurance company, or at least that's what he'd told me. I found him in the living room with Diane and Crystal. They were huddled around the coffee table, papers spread everywhere, speaking in low, urgent voices. The moment I opened the door, they went silent. Diane quickly gathered the documents and shoved them into her designer handbag, the one I'd helped her buy last Christmas, spending nearly $1,000 I could barely afford. "Mama, you're back early," Marcus said, standing quickly. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "How was the doctor?" "He said I'm perfectly healthy, strong as ever." I watched their faces carefully. Something flickered across Diane's expression. Was it disappointment? Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Crystal, my sweet granddaughter, looked away. "That's wonderful, Grandma," Crystal said, but her voice sounded hollow, rehearsed. "What are you all doing home in the middle of the day?" I asked, setting down my purse. "Just handling some paperwork," Marcus replied too quickly. "Family business. Nothing for you to worry about. Family business that I shouldn't worry about. In my own house. The house Raymond and I had bought 30 years ago, scraping together every dollar for the down payment. I'm going to rest," I said, picking up my purse again. "This heat has worn me out." I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of my bed. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely open my purse. I pulled out the note Dr. Chen had slipped me and unfolded it with trembling fingers. The words hit me like a physical blow. "Mrs. Hayes, your son and daughter-in-law came to my office yesterday. They asked me to certify that you are mentally incompetent and require full-time care. They specifically asked about dementia diagnosis and whether I could recommend immediate placement in a nursing facility. They also inquired about your assets and any medical power of attorney arrangements. This is highly irregular and deeply concerning. You are in perfect health, physically and mentally. Please protect yourself. Trust no one. Dr. Chen." I read it 3 times, 4 times. My vision blurred. The paper fluttered from my hands to the floor. My son. The boy I had raised, the child I had chosen when I couldn't have children of my own, the young man I had worked myself to exhaustion to provide for. He was trying to have me declared insane. He wanted to lock me away and take control of everything I owned. I couldn't breathe. The room spun. I pressed my hand against my chest, feeling my heart hammer against my ribs. This couldn't be real. There had to be some mistake, some misunderstanding. Marcus loved me, didn't he? Hadn't every sacrifice been worth it because I was building a loving family? But even as I tried to rationalize it, pieces began falling into place. The way Diane had been asking about my finances lately, casual questions about my pension and savings, the way Marcus had suggested more than once that this house was too big for me, that I might be happier in a community setting with people my own age. The way Crystal had stopped confiding in me had grown distant over the past year. I heard their voices downstairs, muffled but agitated. I crept to my bedroom door and opened it just a crack. Sound traveled easily in this old house. Raymond used to joke that we had no secrets from each other because the walls were so thin. The doctor wouldn't cooperate, Diane was saying, her voice tight with frustration. I laid it on thick, told him she forgets to take her medication, leaves the stove on, doesn't recognize us sometimes, but he insisted she's completely fine, mentally and physically. "Damn it," Marcus muttered. "We need that certification. Without it, we can't move forward with the commitment." Commitment. The word sent ice through my veins. "What do we do now?" Crystal asked. She sounded young, uncertain. "I need that money for the semester abroad." "You promised?" "We'll find another doctor," Marcus interrupted. "Someone more flexible. Someone who understands that sometimes families need to make difficult decisions for their elderly loved ones. Someone they could pay off," he meant. Someone who would lie. "How long is this going to take?" Diane demanded. "I'm not spending another year in this house, playing the devoted daughter-in-law while she hovers over everything we do. I married you because I thought you'd inherit soon. That was 11 years ago, Marcus. 11 years, and she's still here, healthy as a horse, spending our money. Our money. The money I had earned over 40 years of nursing, working overtime shifts, taking extra cases. The money Raymond had left me from his pension and life insurance. The money that was mine. They saw it as theirs. She's going to live forever," Crystal complained. "All my friends have grandparents who are actually old. She still gardens, still drives, still interferes in everything. It's so embarrassing." "Keep your voice down," Marcus hissed. "Look, here's what we do. Tomorrow, I'm calling Attorney Morrison. There has to be a legal way to have her declared incompetent without a doctor's signature. Maybe if we document enough incidents." "What incidents?" Diane interrupted. "She doesn't have incidents. She's perfectly fine, and everyone can see it." "Then we create incidents," Marcus said coldly. "We start small, switch her medications, make her confused, hide her things, then act concerned when she can't find them. Tell people she's been saying strange things. Build a pattern. Within a few months, we can have enough evidence to convince any judge that she needs a guardian. They were going to gaslight me. They were going to systematically destroy my mind, my credibility, my independence, and then they were going to lock me away and take everything I had. I backed away from the door, my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. I couldn't let them know I'd heard. I couldn't let them know I knew. I sank onto my bed, Dr. Chen's note still on the floor beside me. He had warned me. He had risked his professional relationship with my family to warn me. And he was right. I needed to protect myself. But how? They were my family. Marcus was my son. I had given him everything. How do you fight against someone you love, or someone you thought you loved? That night, I lay awake in my bed, listening to the house settle around me. Every creak of the floorboards made me tense. Around 2 a.m, I heard voices in the kitchen. They thought I was asleep. I slipped out of bed and crept to the top of the stairs, my heart pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it. We should just increase the dose of her blood pressure medication, Diane was saying. Make her dizzy, confused. She'd start seeming incompetent really fast. No, that's too risky, Marcus replied. What if something happens to her before we get the legal papers in place? We'd get nothing. We need her alive and incompetent, not dead. They were discussing me like I was a problem to be solved, an obstacle to be removed, not a person, not someone who had loved them, sacrificed for them, given them everything. What about the house? Crystal asked. How much is it worth? At least $400,000, Marcus said. Maybe more, depending on the market. Plus her savings, her pension, the life insurance policy. We're talking over $600,000 total. When do we get it? Crystal pressed. Once she's committed and we have power of attorney, we can start accessing the accounts. We'll sell the house, consolidate everything. By this time next year, we'll be set. My granddaughter, whom I had rocked to sleep as a baby, whom I had helped raise while her parents worked, she was sitting in my kitchen at 2 a.m, calculating how much my life was worth. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen on the stairs, listening to them destroy every belief I'd ever held about family, about love, about the meaning of sacrifice. I had given Marcus my life. I had chosen him, raised him, loved him more fiercely than anything I'd ever known. And he had been waiting for me to die. No, worse than that. He had been planning how to make me disappear while I was still alive. The next morning, I got up before dawn. I packed a small suitcase with essentials, clothes, medications, important documents. I moved silently through the house, taking only what I absolutely needed. I left a note on the kitchen table. Gone to visit an old friend. Back in a few days. Mama. They wouldn't suspect anything. After all, I was just the confused old woman, right? What could I possibly do? I called a taxi and gave the driver an address I'd looked up on my phone at 5 a.m, the Grand Continental Hotel downtown, the nicest hotel in the city. If I was going to fight back, I needed to do it from a position of strength, and I needed to be somewhere they couldn't find me. The woman at the front desk looked surprised when I asked for a suite, but she maintained her professional composure. How long will you be staying with us, Mrs. Hayes? I'm not sure yet, I said, handing her my credit card. Could be a week, could be longer. I'll let you know. She nodded and processed my reservation. As I rode the elevator up to the 7th floor, I caught my reflection in the mirrored walls. I looked older than I remembered, tired, with lines of worry etched deep around my eyes. But there was something else there too, a spark of anger, of determination. I had survived poverty, racism, the death of my babies, the loss of my husband. I had put myself through nursing school while raising a child and working 3 jobs. I had built a life from nothing, and I'd be damned if I let them take it away from me without a fight. The suite was beautiful, spacious, elegant, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I set down my suitcase and stood at the window, looking out at the Chicago skyline, at the city where I'd spent my entire life fighting for every good thing I had. Then I took out my phone and made 3 calls. First, to my bank, to verify my accounts and change all my passwords. Second, to the most prestigious law firm in Chicago, Morrison, Chen and Associates. Ironic that they shared Dr. Chen's last name, though there was no relation. I asked for their head of elder law. And third, to a private investigator whose name I'd found online, a woman named Vanessa Wright, who specialized in family fraud cases. By noon, I had appointments with both the lawyer and the investigator. By evening, I would begin building my case. They thought I was weak. They thought I was vulnerable. They thought I was just an old woman who would quietly disappear when they decided it was time. They were about to learn that Geneva Lorraine Hayes had survived too much, fought too hard, and sacrificed too much to go down without a war. The gloves were off, and I was going to make them regret the day they decided I was expendable. If you're watching this and you've ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted, someone you loved, subscribe to this channel. You're not alone, and your story deserves to be heard. Let's keep going together. The lawyer's office was everything I expected. Polished mahogany furniture, walls lined with legal books, certificates framed in gold. But attorney Catherine Morrison herself surprised me. I had pictured someone older, stern, but the woman who greeted me was maybe 45, with warm brown eyes and a firm handshake that told me she meant business. "Mrs. Hayes," she said, gesturing to a leather chair across from her desk, "your message said this was urgent. Tell me everything." So I did. I told her about Marcus, about the adoption, about the 42 years of sacrifice. I told her about Dr. Chen's warning, about the conversation I'd overheard, about their plan to gaslight me into incompetence. My voice broke several times, but I pushed through. Catherine listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad, her expression growing darker with each detail I shared. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me directly. "Mrs. Hayes, what your family is planning constitutes elder abuse, conspiracy to commit fraud, and potentially criminal exploitation. This is serious, very serious. Can they actually do it?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. "Can they have me declared incompetent?" "Not easily, and not if we act first," Catherine said firmly. "But I won't lie to you, these cases can get ugly. Family members contest them. They drag out for months, sometimes years. Are you prepared for that kind of fight?" I thought about Marcus's voice in the kitchen, cold and calculating as he discussed increasing my medication. I thought about Diane counting my money like it already belonged to her. I thought about Crystal asking when she'd get paid. "I'm prepared," I said. "What do I need to do?" "First, we document everything. I want you to write down every conversation you remember, every interaction that seemed off, every financial transaction they might have been involved in. Second, we get you evaluated by 3 independent psychiatrists. I have colleagues who specialize in competency evaluations. We establish, beyond any doubt, that you are of sound mind. Third, we secure your assets, change all your passwords, review all your accounts, make sure nothing can be touched without your direct authorization." "I've already started on the accounts," I said. She smiled approvingly. "Good. You're thinking clearly, which is exactly what we need. Now, I also want to hire a private investigator to document their activities. If they're planning fraud, they're likely already engaged in questionable behavior. We need evidence." "I've already contacted someone," I said, pulling out my phone. "Vanessa Wright. She's meeting me later today." Catherine's eyebrows rose. "Vanessa is excellent, thorough, discreet, and she has a particular talent for financial fraud cases. Mrs. Hayes, I have to say, you're handling this with remarkable composure." "I'm terrified," I admitted, "but I've been through worse. When Raymond died, I thought my world had ended. I survived that. I can survive this." "You won't just survive," Catherine said, leaning forward. "We're going to make sure you win. And Mrs. Hayes, what they're attempting isn't just morally wrong, it's criminal. When we're done building this case, they won't just lose access to your money. They could face prosecution." Something fierce sparked in my chest. Justice. Not just protection, but actual consequences for what they'd tried to do. "I want that," I said quietly. "I want them to understand that they can't do this to people, that they can't do this to me." Catherine nodded. "Then let's get to work." I met Vanessa Wright that evening at a small cafe 3 blocks from my hotel. She was younger than I expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that immediately put me at ease. She ordered coffee, I ordered tea, and we sat in a corner booth while I explained everything again. "How long have you noticed suspicious behavior?" Vanessa asked, pulling out a tablet to take notes. Looking back, maybe a year, but I didn't recognize it as suspicious at the time. I just thought they were stressed, busy with their own lives. "That's common," Vanessa said. "Elder financial abuse usually starts slowly. Small boundary violations that escalate over time. Tell me about their financial situation. Do you know how much money your son makes?" He told me he's a regional manager at an insurance company. I assumed he was doing well. He drives a Mercedes, Diane wears expensive clothes, Crystal goes to a private university. Do you help them financially? I hesitated, embarrassed. Sometimes. Marcus asked to borrow $20,000 2 years ago for a business investment. I gave it to him. He never paid it back, but I didn't push it. He's my son, and I've been paying for Crystal's tuition, about $30,000 a year. Vanessa's expression didn't change, but she made a note. Any other financial entanglements? I co-signed on their mortgage 5 years ago when they bought their house. They said it was just to get a better interest rate. Mrs. Hayes, I need to be honest with you. Based on what you're telling me, they've likely been planning this for years, not months. The co-signing, the borrowed money that was never repaid, the tuition payments. These are all ways of establishing financial dependence and entanglement. It makes it easier for them to argue they're already managing your affairs. The tea in my cup had gone cold, so I've been helping them build a case against me. You've been being generous with people you trusted. That's not a crime. What they're doing is... Vanessa leaned back. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run complete background checks on Marcus, Diane, and Crystal. I'm going to investigate their actual financial situation. Debts, income, spending patterns. I'm going to find out if they've consulted any other doctors or lawyers. And I'm going to document their movements and communications over the next several weeks. If they're planning fraud, they're going to make mistakes. People always do. How long will this take? Initial findings? About a week? Complete investigation? Could be several weeks. But Mrs. Hayes, she looked at me seriously. Once we start digging, there's no going back. If we find evidence of criminal activity, we're legally obligated to report it. Your son could end up facing charges. Are you ready for that? Was I ready to potentially send my own son to prison? I thought about his voice again, discussing how to drug me into confusion. I thought about Diane selling my jewelry, Raymond's gifts, at pawn shops. I thought about Crystal, pregnant and desperate, willing to sacrifice her grandmother for tuition money. I'm ready, I said. Do whatever you need to do. My phone rang constantly over the next 3 days. Marcus called 17 times. Diane left 11 voicemails, each one progressively more frantic. Crystal sent text messages that evolved from concern to anger to manipulation. Grandma, where are you? We're worried sick. You can't just disappear like this. It's not safe. Dad says you're having an episode. Please come home so we can help you. Fine. Be selfish. But when something happens to you, don't blame us. I didn't respond to any of them. Catherine had advised complete silence. Let them panic, she said. Panicked people make mistakes. On day 4, Vanessa called me. Mrs. Hayes, I need you to sit down. I was already sitting in my hotel suite, but my heart started racing. What did you find? Your son was fired from his job 8 months ago. He's been lying to you about still working there. He hasn't had steady employment since. The room tilted. What? But he leaves every morning. He goes to coffee shops, libraries, sometimes just drives around. He's been living entirely off your money and Diane's salary. Speaking of Diane, she's a real estate agent, but her commission income has dropped 70% over the past 2 years. They're drowning in debt, Mrs. Hayes. Credit cards maxed out, mortgage 3 months behind, car payments overdue. They owe over $150,000 to various creditors. I couldn't breathe. The $20,000 Marcus borrowed, gambling debts. I found records of him at 3 different casinos. He's got a serious problem, probably has for years. And there's more. Diane has been systematically applying for credit cards in your name for the past 6 months. What? 5 different cards. Total credit limit of $70,000. She's charged over $43,000 so far. Luxury purchases, restaurants, a trip to Miami last March. Last March? I whispered. They told me they were visiting Diane's sick mother in Atlanta. I gave them money for the trip. They went to Miami Beach and stayed at the Fontainebleau for a week. I have the hotel receipts. Every revelation was a knife. They hadn't just been planning to steal from me. They'd already been doing it for months, maybe years. What about Crystal? I asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Vanessa paused. Your granddaughter is pregnant, about 14 weeks along. The father is her economics professor, a married man named Dr. Richard Thornton. He's 52 years old and has no intention of leaving his wife. Crystal has been pressuring him for money for an abortion, but he's refused. That's why she needs cash quickly. My precious grandbaby, the little girl I'd helped raise, was in a nightmare situation. And instead of coming to me for help, she'd conspired with her parents to rob me. There's one more thing, Vanessa said gently. I've documented 3 visits your son made to different physicians over the past month, trying to find one who would certify you as incompetent. All 3 refused. Yesterday, he met with someone named Paul Richardson. He's a known document forger in the Chicago area. I have photos of them together at a restaurant, exchanging what appears to be money. They're going to forge medical documents, I said numbly. It looks that way. Mrs. Hayes, this has escalated beyond civil fraud. This is criminal conspiracy. I'm legally required to report this to the authorities. Do it, I said. My voice sounded strange, hollow. Report everything. After I hung up, I sat in my beautiful hotel suite and cried for the first time since this began. I cried for the 42 years I'd wasted loving someone who had never loved me back. I cried for Raymond, who had died believing we'd built something good. I cried for the grandmother I'd thought I was, the family I'd thought I had. But most of all, I cried because I finally understood. Marcus had never seen me as his mother. I had been an investment, a long-term financial plan. And now that the return wasn't coming fast enough, he was ready to liquidate his assets. If this story is affecting you, if you're seeing yourself in what I'm sharing, leave a comment. Tell me your story. Sometimes knowing we're not alone is the only thing that gets us through. And please, share this video. Someone else needs to hear it too. When my tears finally stopped, I called Catherine Morrison. I want to go on the offensive, I told her. No more hiding. No more waiting for them to make the next move. I want to confront them, but I want to do it strategically. I want them to incriminate themselves publicly. I could hear the smile in Catherine's voice. Mrs. Hayes, I was hoping you'd say that. I have an idea. The plan was brilliant and terrifying in equal measure. Catherine arranged for me to schedule a meeting with a real estate agent at the city's most prestigious brokerage, supposedly to view million-dollar properties I was interested in purchasing. She made sure the appointment was at 11 o'clock on a Monday morning. Meanwhile, Vanessa discovered that Marcus had scheduled an appointment at the same brokerage for the same morning, planning to discuss listing my house for sale. We were going to accidentally encounter each other. I dressed carefully that morning. My best navy suit, the pearl necklace Raymond had given me for our 20th anniversary, elegant heels. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. My hair was freshly done, styled at the hotel salon. My makeup was subtle but perfect. I looked powerful, in control. I looked nothing like a confused elderly woman who needed to be committed. The real estate office was all glass and marble, modern and expensive. My agent, a polished young man named Derek, greeted me warmly. Mrs. Hayes, so wonderful to meet you. I've pulled together several properties that match your criteria. Luxury condos with full amenities, excellent security, perfect for an active lifestyle. Shall we look at the listings? We were reviewing a spectacular penthouse on Lakeshore Drive when I heard familiar voices at the reception desk. My heart began to pound, but I kept my expression neutral, focused on the property information in front of me. We're here about a property listing, Marcus was saying. The home belongs to my mother, but she's currently incapacitated, and I have power of attorney to handle her affairs. Power of attorney. The lie rolled off his tongue so easily. I see, the receptionist said. Do you have the POA documentation with you? It's being processed, Diane interjected smoothly. But we wanted to get the appraisal started. The property is worth at least $400,000, and we're hoping to move quickly. I stood up, and Derek looked at me questioningly. Is something wrong, Mrs. Hayes? Not at all, I said clearly, my voice carrying across the open office space. I just heard some people at the desk discussing my house. I should probably introduce myself. I walked toward the reception area, and the moment Marcus saw me, his face went absolutely white. Diane gasped. Crystal, who I hadn't noticed was with them, actually stumbled backward. Hello, Marcus, I said pleasantly. Diane. Crystal. What an unexpected surprise. Marcus's mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out. It was Diane who recovered first. Geneva, what are you doing here? We've been worried sick. Have you? I turned to the receptionist, who looked thoroughly confused. I'm Geneva Hayes. These are my son and daughter-in-law. They seem to be under the impression that they have power of attorney over my affairs and the right to sell my house. I'm curious to see this documentation, since I've never signed any such document. The office had gone silent. Every agent, every client, everyone had stopped to watch this unfold. Mrs. Hayes, the office manager appeared, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes. Is there a problem? There seems to be a misunderstanding, I said calmly. My family appears to believe I'm incapacitated and that they have authority over my property. I'd like to clarify that I am in perfect health, both mentally and physically, and I have given no one power of attorney over anything I own. Mother, you're confused, Marcus started. Am I? I pulled out my phone and opened the recording app. Is that why I'm here purchasing $1.5 million condominium with my own money? Because I'm confused? Derek's eyes widened. The office manager looked stunned. $1 million, Crystal whispered. Oh yes, sweetheart, I said, looking directly at my granddaughter. It turns out your senile grandmother has significantly more money than you thought. Quite a bit more than the $600,000 you were all counting on stealing. We weren't stealing, Diane said desperately. We were trying to protect you. By forging medical documents? I asked loudly. By meeting with Paul Richardson, a known document forger, and paying him to create fake psychiatric evaluations? Is that how you protect someone? Marcus turned even paler. How do you— I know everything, I said. I know about your job loss, about your gambling debts, about the credit cards Diane opened in my name. I know about the trip to Miami you took with my stolen money while telling me you were visiting a sick relative. I know about Crystal's situation and her desperate need for cash. I know all of it. The office manager immediately picked up her phone. I'm calling security. That won't be necessary, a new voice said. Catherine Morrison walked into the office, followed by two people in professional attire. I'm attorney Catherine Morrison, representing Mrs. Geneva Hayes. These are notaries from my firm. We're here to officially document that these three individuals have absolutely no legal authority over Mrs. Hayes or her assets, and that any attempt to exercise such authority constitutes fraud. Marcus finally found his voice. This is insane. Mother, you need help. You're clearly having some kind of breakdown. I pressed play on my phone recording. His voice filled the space, clear and cold. We make her really lose her mind. We switch her medications. We hide her things. We tell her she did things she didn't do. In a month, any doctor will certify that she's mentally ill. The silence that followed was absolute. I could see the horror on people's faces, the disgust, the shock. Several people had their phones out, recording. This was going to be all over social media within hours. That recording is illegal, Diane shouted, her composure completely shattered. Actually, Illinois is a one-party consent state, Catherine said smoothly. Mrs. Hayes had every right to record conversations in her own home, especially when she had reason to believe a crime was being planned. Marcus grabbed Diane's arm. We're leaving. Excellent idea, Catherine said. But know this. Criminal charges are being filed. The FBI is investigating your meeting with Paul Richardson. Every fraudulent credit card, every forged document, every illegal transaction will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. You're not just losing access to your mother's money. You're likely going to prison. They ran. There's no other word for it. They literally ran out of that office, leaving behind a room full of witnesses to their attempted fraud. I stood there, shaking but steady, surrounded by strangers who looked at me with a mixture of sympathy and admiration. Mrs. Hayes, the office manager said quietly, if you need anything, if you need us to testify to what we just witnessed, we will. What they tried to do to you is unconscionable. Thank you, I managed to say. Derek, my real estate agent, approached hesitantly. Mrs. Hayes, should we continue looking at properties, or would you like to reschedule? I took a deep breath and squared my shoulders. Let's continue. I came here to find a home, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. They don't get to ruin this day for me, too. And so I spent the next 2 hours looking at beautiful condos overlooking Lake Michigan, making plans for my future, reclaiming my life one decision at a time. But I knew this was far from over. In fact, the real war was just beginning. The video went viral within hours. Someone in that real estate office had recorded the entire confrontation on their phone and posted it online with the caption, "Grandmother destroys family trying to steal her fortune." By that evening, it had 3 million views. By the next morning, it was on the news. I woke up in my hotel suite to 17 missed calls from reporters, 43 emails requesting interviews, and hundreds of messages on social media from complete strangers offering support. My hands shook as I scrolled through them, reading story after story from other elderly people who had been exploited, manipulated, robbed by their own families. Mrs. Hayes, you saved my mother, one woman wrote. I was about to sign the papers to put her in a home because my brother convinced me she was losing it. After seeing your video, I investigated. He's been stealing from her for years. Thank you for being brave enough to speak up. Catherine called at 8 a.m. Have you seen the news? I can't stop seeing it, I said, staring at my face on the television screen as CNN replayed the confrontation. This is good for us, Catherine said. Public pressure is enormous. The state's attorney's office called me this morning. They want to fast-track the criminal investigation. The FBI is moving up their timeline on the document fraud charges. And Mrs. Hayes, I've had 12 other elderly clients reach out to me in the last 4 hours because of your story. You're not just fighting for yourself anymore. You're giving other people the courage to fight too. I didn't feel courageous. I felt exhausted and heartbroken and terrified. But I also felt something else, a fierce, burning determination that what happened to me would not be in vain. What happens next? I asked. Next, they're going to try to make a deal. They're going to reach out through lawyers, try to apologize, try to make this go away quietly. Don't accept anything without talking to me first. Don't respond to them directly. And Mrs. Hayes, prepare yourself. This is going to get worse before it gets better. She was right. That afternoon, I received an email from an attorney I'd never heard of, claiming to represent Marcus and Diane. The subject line read, Urgent, Family Reconciliation Proposal. Dear Mrs. Hayes, I represent your son, Marcus Hayes, and his wife, Diane. They have asked me to reach out to express their deep remorse for the recent misunderstanding and to propose a path toward family healing. They acknowledge that there were miscommunications and regrettable statements made in moments of stress, but they maintain that their intentions were always to ensure your well-being and safety. They propose the following resolution. All parties agree to drop any legal actions, criminal or civil. Your son and daughter-in-law will return any funds that may have been inappropriately accessed. In exchange, you agree not to pursue prosecution and to release them from any civil liability. They believe this will allow the family to move forward and repair relationships, particularly for the sake of your granddaughter Crystal, who is experiencing a difficult time and needs family support. Please consider this offer carefully. Prolonged legal battles will be expensive, emotionally draining, and damaging to everyone involved, particularly to your legacy and how you will be remembered by future generations. Respectfully, James Whitmore, Attorney at Law. I read it 3 times, feeling my blood pressure rise with each word. Misunderstanding, miscommunications, regrettable statements. They were trying to reframe a calculated conspiracy to destroy my mind and steal my life savings as a simple family disagreement. And that last line, that subtle threat about my legacy, about how I'd be remembered, that was pure manipulation. They were betting that I would value family harmony over justice, that I would sacrifice myself one more time to keep the peace. I forwarded the email to Catherine without responding. She called me back within 10 minutes. Absolutely not. Don't even consider it. I wasn't planning to, I said. But Catherine, that part about Crystal, she is in trouble. She's pregnant and alone, and she's an adult who participated in a conspiracy to defraud and abuse you, Catherine interrupted firmly. I understand she's your granddaughter. I understand you love her. But Mrs. Hayes, she sat in your kitchen at 2 a.m. asking when she'd get your money. She knew exactly what her parents were planning, and she chose to be part of it. You can feel compassion for her situation without sacrificing yourself to fix it. I knew she was right, but God, it hurt. Crystal had been such a sweet baby, such a bright little girl. Where had I failed her? Where had I failed all of them? This isn't your failure, Catherine said, as if reading my thoughts. You gave them everything. Love, support, opportunities, financial help. They chose to see you as an ATM instead of a person. That's on them, not you. That night, alone in my hotel suite, I made a decision that surprised even me. I opened my laptop, created an account on YouTube, and titled my first video, The Truth About Elder Abuse, A Grandmother's Story. I positioned my phone on the desk, pressed record, and began to speak. My name is Geneva Hayes. I'm 67 years old, and I'm about to tell you how the son I adopted and raised for 42 years tried to have me declared insane so he could steal everything I own. I talked for 40 minutes, telling the whole story from the beginning. I played the recordings. I showed the fraudulent credit card statements. I explained the document forgery conspiracy. I held nothing back. When I finished, my hands were shaking, but I uploaded the video anyway. By morning, it had 2 million views. By the end of the week, it had 20 million. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of comments poured in, some from other elderly people sharing similar stories, some from adult children admitting they'd considered similar actions, some from lawyers and social workers offering resources and help. But 3 comments in particular caught my attention. The first was from someone named Patricia Chen. Mrs. Hayes, I'm Dr. Michael Chen's daughter. My father is so proud of you for speaking up. He said you were one of the bravest patients he's ever had. Keep fighting. The second was from a user called Justice Seeker 47. I'm a social worker in Chicago. Yesterday, I prevented a commitment based on suspicious family circumstances because of your video. You just saved someone's life. The third comment made me cry. It was from someone named Raymond's Mom 1956. My husband passed away 11 years ago too. I understand that loneliness, that vulnerability. But Mrs. Hayes, look what you've built from your pain. Your Raymond would be so proud of you. I know mine would be. If you've made it this far in my story, thank you. Thank you for listening, for caring, for bearing witness to what happened to me. Please subscribe to this channel, not for me, but for all the other grandmothers and grandfathers out there who need to know they're not alone. We are stronger than we think. We deserve better than we've been given. And together, we can demand it. The criminal charges were filed 3 weeks after the real estate office confrontation. Marcus, Diane, and Crystal were all indicted. Marcus and Diane for conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, identity theft, and attempted forgery. Crystal received lesser charges as a cooperating witness after her attorney negotiated a deal where she would testify against her parents in exchange for probation. The day of the arraignment, I sat in the courtroom gallery with Catherine beside me. I watched Marcus and Diane led in by their attorneys, both of them looking haggard and defeated. They didn't look at me. They couldn't. Crystal came in separately, her pregnancy just starting to show. She glanced in my direction once, her eyes red from crying, but I looked away. I wasn't ready to face her yet. Maybe I never would be. The judge reviewed the charges, and I listened to the prosecutor detail every crime, every betrayal, every violation. It was surreal, hearing my life reduced to legal terminology, hearing the people I'd loved described as defendants and conspirators. When the judge asked how they pleaded, Marcus's attorney stood. Your Honor, my client wishes to enter a plea of not guilty. We intend to vigorously defend against these charges, which we believe are the result of a family dispute that has been blown out of proportion by media attention and— Your Honor, the prosecutor interrupted. We have recordings, bank records, witness testimony, and documented meetings with a known forger. This isn't a family dispute. This is systematic elder abuse and criminal fraud. The judge looked at Marcus over her reading glasses. Mr. Hayes, I've reviewed the evidence presented in the preliminary filings. I'm setting bail at $250,000. You are prohibited from any contact with the victim, Geneva Hayes, and from accessing or attempting to access any of her financial accounts or properties. Do you understand? Marcus nodded, his face gray. Diane's bail was set at the same amount. Neither of them could make it. They were remanded into custody until trial. As they were led away, Diane turned and screamed at me across the courtroom. This is your fault. You selfish, bitter old woman. You're destroying this family. The judge banged her gavel. Remove her from my courtroom. I sat there, watching my daughter-in-law, the woman I had welcomed into my family, the woman I had helped financially for years, being dragged away while she cursed me. I felt numb, empty. It's over, Catherine whispered beside me. But it wasn't over. Not yet. The trial took place 6 months later. It lasted 8 days, and every moment felt like torture. I had to sit there while their defense attorneys tried to paint me as a vindictive woman seeking revenge over normal family disagreements. They brought in a psychiatrist who testified that elderly people often misinterpret benign behavior as threatening. They suggested I had memory problems that made me unreliable, but the prosecution was relentless. They played the recordings of Marcus and Diane planning to drug me. They showed the fraudulent credit card statements, over $50,000 in charges I never authorized. They brought in Paul Richardson, the document forger, who testified about Marcus paying him $10,000 to create fake psychiatric evaluations and medical records. And then Crystal testified. She walked to the stand wearing a simple black dress, her pregnancy clearly visible now at 7 months. She wouldn't look at her parents. She wouldn't look at me either. "Miss Hayes," the prosecutor began gently, "can you tell the court about the conversations you heard regarding your grandmother?" Crystal's voice was barely audible. "My parents talked about getting her committed to a nursing home so they could access her money. They said she was healthy, but they needed to make her seem incompetent. My mom talked about switching her medications. My dad talked about hiding her things and then accusing her of losing them. And what was your role in this plan?" Crystal started crying. "I needed money. I was pregnant, and the father wouldn't help, and I had tuition bills, and I didn't think about what it would do to her. I just thought about what I needed." "Did you love your grandmother?" "I thought I did, but if I really loved her, I wouldn't have let them do that to her. I wouldn't have helped them." She finally looked up, looked directly at me. "Grandma, I'm so sorry. I know it doesn't fix anything. I know you probably hate me, but I'm so sorry." I couldn't respond. The judge wouldn't allow it, but something in my chest cracked open. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of understanding that Crystal was a victim too, in a different way. A victim of her parents' greed, of her own desperation, of a toxic family dynamic that had poisoned all of us. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Marcus was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Diane received 12 years. Both would be eligible for parole after serving at least 70% of their sentences. But the judge made it clear she found their crimes particularly heinous. "You targeted the most vulnerable person in your life," the judge said during sentencing. "A woman who loved you, who sacrificed for you, who gave you every opportunity. And you repaid that love with betrayal, manipulation, and cruelty. The court finds your actions reprehensible and deserving of significant punishment." Crystal, because she cooperated and pleaded guilty, received 5 years probation and community service. She was also ordered to attend counseling and parenting classes for when her baby was born. When it was over, when the bailiffs led Marcus and Diane away to begin their sentences, I stood in the hallway outside the courtroom and felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction. Just a hollow, aching emptiness where my family used to be. Vanessa found me there, standing alone while people rushed past. "Mrs. Hayes, are you all right?" "I won," I said quietly. "Why doesn't it feel like winning?" "Because you're a good person," she said simply. "You wanted justice, not revenge. You got justice. But that doesn't erase what they did or heal what was broken. Will it ever stop hurting?" "Eventually. Not today. Maybe not for a long time. But eventually, you'll wake up and realize you've built something new, something better, something that's entirely yours." She was right, though I couldn't see it then. Over the next year, I threw myself into advocacy work. I used my viral story as a platform to speak about elder abuse, financial exploitation, and family dynamics. I partnered with organizations that provided legal resources to vulnerable seniors. I testified before the state legislature about strengthening protections for elderly people against predatory family members. I also bought that penthouse on Lakeshore Drive, the one I'd been looking at when my family tried to sell my house. It was beautiful, modern, safe, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake and a doorman who greeted me by name every morning. I decorated it exactly how I wanted it, with no one else's opinions to consider. I filled it with art I loved, books I wanted to read, furniture that was comfortable instead of impressive. For the first time in my life, I created a space that was entirely mine. Crystal reached out 6 months after the trial. She sent me a letter, handwritten, 6 pages long. "Dear Grandma Geneva, I don't know if you'll read this. I wouldn't blame you if you threw it away, but I need to try. I had my baby 3 months ago, a girl. I named her Grace because I hope someday I can understand what grace really means, the kind you showed me my whole life, the kind I threw away. I'm living with my friend Sarah now, working part-time at a bookstore, trying to figure out how to be a good mother when I had such terrible examples. My counselor says I need to take responsibility for my own choices, not blame everything on Mom and Dad. She's right. I chose to go along with their plan. I chose to see you as a source of money instead of a person. I chose cruelty over kindness, greed over love. Those were my choices, and I have to live with them. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve the chance to ask for it, but I want you to know that every day, When I hold Grace, I think about all the times you held me, all the sacrifices you made, all the love you gave that I took for granted. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be someone Grace can be proud of. I'm trying to be someone you would have been proud of if I hadn't destroyed that possibility. If you ever want to meet her, to meet Grace, I would be honored. If you don't, I understand. Either way, I will make sure she knows about you. The real you, the strong, brave woman who fought back when everyone underestimated her, the woman who survived when people tried to destroy her. I love you, Grandma. I always did, even when I was too broken to show it properly. Your granddaughter, Crystal. I read that letter 20 times. I cried over it, raged over it, folded it up and put it away, took it out and read it again. Catherine advised caution. She's saying the right things now, but people don't change overnight. Protect yourself first. Vanessa was more blunt. She participated in a conspiracy to destroy you. Words are easy. Actions matter. But I thought about Raymond, about how he used to say that people deserve second chances, but only if they're willing to do the work to earn them. I waited 3 months. I watched from a distance as Crystal completed her community service, attended her counseling sessions, worked her job at the bookstore. I had Vanessa do periodic check-ins, not surveillance exactly, but verification that Crystal was doing what she claimed. And then, on a Saturday morning in April, I called her. Crystal, it's Grandma Geneva. The silence on the other end lasted so long, I thought she'd hung up. Grandma? Her voice cracked. I hoped, but I didn't think. I read your letter, I said. All 27 times I've read it now. 27? She laughed and cried at the same time. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you are. And Crystal, I need you to understand something. I'm not ready to let you back into my life the way things were before. I may never be ready for that. What your parents did, what you participated in, that broke something fundamental. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight. I understand. But, I continued, my voice softer, I would like to meet my great-granddaughter. I would like to know Grace. And I would like to see if we can build something new. Not what we had before, but something honest, something real, something based on who we both actually are instead of who we pretended to be. Yes, Crystal whispered. Yes, please, whenever you're ready. However you want to do this, I'll follow your lead. We met 2 weeks later at a neutral location, a small cafe near the botanical gardens. Crystal arrived with Grace in a stroller, looking nervous and exhausted and young. So heartbreakingly young. Grace was beautiful, 4 months old, with Raymond's eyes and my nose and a serious expression that made me smile, despite everything. Can I hold her? I asked. Of course. Crystal lifted Grace carefully and placed her in my arms. The moment that baby settled against me, something shifted in my chest. The wall I'd built around my heart didn't crumble. It was still there, still necessary, but a tiny crack appeared, letting in just enough light to remind me that love, real love, wasn't about biology or obligation. It was about choice. I had chosen Marcus 42 years ago, and he had betrayed that choice catastrophically. But maybe I could choose again, choose differently, choose with wisdom instead of naivety, with boundaries instead of blind faith, with hope tempered by reality. Tell me about her, I said to Crystal. Tell me everything. And she did. We sat there for 3 hours, talking about Grace, about Crystal's life, about her therapy, about her struggles and small victories. We didn't talk about Marcus or Diane. We didn't talk about the trial. We just talked about now, about today, about the possibility of tomorrow. It wasn't reconciliation. Not yet. Maybe not ever, in the way people usually mean that word. But it was something. A beginning. A tentative bridge across the wreckage of what had been destroyed. When I went home that night, I stood at my floor-to-ceiling windows looking out at Lake Michigan, at the city lights reflecting on the water, at the life I had built from the ashes of my family's betrayal. I thought about Raymond, about how proud he would be that I had fought back, that I had refused to be a victim, that I had transformed my pain into purpose. I thought about all the messages I still received daily from elderly people who had found the courage to report abuse, to leave toxic situations, to reclaim their lives because they'd seen me do it first. I thought about Grace, about the possibility that maybe, just maybe, I could help Crystal break the cycle that had poisoned my family for generations. And I thought about myself, Geneva Lorraine Hayes, 68 years old now, survivor, advocate, grandmother, great-grandmother, woman who had been broken but refused to stay broken. I had spent 42 years believing that sacrifice was the highest form of love, that giving everything of myself to my family was what made me worthy, what made me good. But I had learned the hard way that real love requires boundaries, that sacrifice without reciprocity is just self-destruction, that being good doesn't mean letting people destroy you. I had learned that family isn't defined by blood or legal documents or years of shared history. It's defined by respect, by honesty, by people who see you as a whole person instead of a resource to be exploited. I had learned that it's never too late to start over, to fight back, to demand better, to choose yourself. And most importantly, I had learned that endings can be beginnings if you're brave enough to write your own story instead of letting other people write it for you. My phone buzzed with a text from Crystal. Thank you for today. Grace and I are so lucky you gave us a chance. See you next week? I smiled and typed back, next week, same time, same place. And Crystal, bring pictures. I want to see everything I missed, because that was another thing I'd learned. Moving forward doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It means choosing what to carry with you and what to leave behind. I would carry the lessons, the strength I'd discovered, the advocacy work that gave meaning to my pain, the possibility of a different kind of family, built on truth instead of obligation. I would leave behind the bitterness, the what-ifs, the fantasy of the family I thought I had. That family never existed. It was a beautiful lie I told myself for 42 years. But this, standing in my own home, living my own life, making my own choices, building new connections on my own terms, this was real. And real, I had discovered, was so much better than the fantasy ever could have been. I turned away from the window and sat down at my computer. I had a speech to write for the state legislature about strengthening elder abuse laws. I had 3 speaking engagements lined up for next month. I had a meeting with a publisher who wanted to turn my story into a book that could help other people. I had work to do, important work, work that mattered, and I had the rest of my life to do it. A life that was finally, completely, undeniably mine. The doctor's note that started this whole nightmare was framed on my wall now, right next to my law degree and the award I'd received from the Elder Advocacy Coalition. Don't go home. Run. Dr. Chen had warned me to run away from danger, but I hadn't run away. I had run toward myself, and that, I thought as I began to type, had made all the difference. If you're watching this and you see yourself in my story, if you're being exploited, manipulated, or abused by someone who claims to love you, please know this: you are not alone. You are not powerless. You are not too old, too weak, or too dependent to fight back. You deserve respect. You deserve honesty. You deserve to live the rest of your life on your own terms, surrounded by people who see your worth. It won't be easy. It will hurt. You will lose people you thought you couldn't live without. But you will survive. And on the other side of that survival, you will discover a strength you never knew you had, and a freedom you never thought possible. Don't let anyone make you smaller to make themselves bigger. Don't let anyone steal your voice, your dignity, or your right to exist as a whole, complete person. And remember, it's never too late to write a new ending to your story. I did it at 67. You can too. This is Geneva Hayes, signing off. Thank you for listening to my story. Now go write your own. And please, subscribe, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment telling me what part of this journey resonated with you. Together, we're stronger than anyone who ever tried to break us. Together, we rise.